Hello everybody, it's Belinda from Belinda's Book Nook, and I'm here today with a new series that I'm calling Thoughts and Takeaways. And I'd like to do these on books. It might primarily be a lot of nonfiction books where there are things that move me, things that have action items, maybe per se, after reading the book, and things that I want to talk to you all about. It can also happen with fiction as well, because a lot of historical fiction drives me in different directions after reading a book. One of the things that I think is a good example of this book that I'm getting ready to do, but also books in general, is that they move us. You know, they make us think, they help us grow, they help us change, and so I think that it's just important to, sometimes people are like, oh, I don't have time to read, but it really is an important part of life, and a part of growth. So without getting on a whole speech on that, I'm going to get started on my book for this series. And the first one that I wanted to do is my Visibility book that I read in November. As you can see, it's got a lot of flags. I was definitely taken by this book. It's a collection of essays. It's edited by Wong, who is an activist herself, and she, and a writer, of course. And she put together just a few of the many different people and stories that she's been collecting for some time now, to give you kind of an opportunity to get a peek in, and to find understanding of this current situation, particularly here in the United States. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts about the book and some of my takeaways. I in no way have exhausted. I think almost every essay in here, I was definitely, appreciative of the opportunity to be exposed to the information. But I did, in my book journal, I did just highlight a couple of different people that really kind of stood out for me. And I will try to talk about them as well. And I'm going to try to do this not too lengthy of a video, because I know people don't want to hear me going on forever. So I'll do the best I can, and I'll get better at this. So if you're patient with me with different books, I will get better at doing this more quickly. So for example, for this book anyway, I took some really great quotes, from this book. Like for example, this one by Wong says, "These stories do not seek to explain the meaning of disability or to inspire or elicit empathy. Rather, they show disabled people simply being, in our own words, by our own accounts." I definitely think that, by reading these, I know people aren't looking for empathy, but I do think, in my experience with this book and the information that was in here, I feel compelled to learn more about many of the things that I was exposed to in the book, and B, to see if there's any ways that I can be of service to help in some of the situations that are presented here. There's just certain things that kind of sat with me, and like I told you, when I read this book, I went really slow, because I would read one essay and really sit and think about it. This book is also structured really well. She has it broken down into 4 different components. So she has part 1 is being, and then she has a collection of essays that follow. Part 2 is becoming, and then part 3 is doing, and part 4 is connecting. And here's the water, because I can feel my throat. But the other thing that she does really great here is before each essay, she has, I'm trying to find the beginning of one. She has almost, I forgot what she refers to it as, but it could also be considered, like, I do write that sometimes, even in here in my journal. I may say trigger warnings, or sometimes on my blog I'll say that for people that before they read a book, in case there's certain things that they might be more sensitive to. But she'll write, of course the ones I picked don't have it. Like this one, content notes, bullying, suicidal ideation. Okay, so you will know that next essay is going to include something of those natures in there. So if you're sensitive to it, Maybe you don't want to read it, or at least you're aware of it going in, so there's no surprises there. So that I really loved. And then the very best thing that she did is in the very back, and I wanted to make sure I put a big flag up so I could see it, is she has further reading. So you can go on and you can read. She has a list of nonfiction suggestions that you could read. She has a list of fiction you could read, anthologies, poetry, online publications and websites, podcasts, articles, essays, videos, audiobooks. I mean, it's about 10 pages of further readings. So you can, walk away from this and continue your journey on some of the, if you're, want to pursue in some of these other areas that you discover in the book, which I definitely am going to do. Because I just, you can't, one of the things is you can't unsee or unlearn something that you learn. So I feel really compelled after learning some of the things that I had in this book that I want to be of service. So there's one gentleman in here that I highlighted, and his name was Latif McLead, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but he talked about AAC, which is augmentative and alternative communication. And he says that it's nonverbal communication for people with speech disabilities using symbols, letters, and words on low-tech and high-tech devices. And, one of the things that he works towards doing is getting people to be more accepting of people that have to use these type of devices, and that should limit their abilities to participate fully in society. One of the things I always, say, sometimes when I'm talking with my husband is that, we do kind of live in a bubble. People with varying degrees of disabilities are kind of pushed to the side, or, pushed out. So you're not seeing them always in mainstream. I went prior to, the COVID lockdown, my husband and I used to go to a lot of shows and stuff. And out of the, 1,000 people there may be 10 people that are in wheelchairs, or, have an interpreter, or, so it's like, it's interesting to see how we all live on this planet, but yet we have pushed people, particularly with disabilities, to the periphery. So his essay was very interesting to read. Another one was Wanda Diaz-Merced, and she's an astronomer, and she had been, had established herself in the career, and she developed, I can't remember exactly what had happened to her, but she ended up losing her vision. And for most people, you'd think, okay, that's the end of the road. How can you be an astronomer? You can't see. Well, she started to explore the options of having sound being used to represent activity and visual things so that she could still participate. And it got so well developed that she was able to make great discoveries. And not only her as a non-seeing being, people that could see also utilized these tools to make discoveries. And so now she is actually, I think, going around and also trying to teach students with those disabilities to be able to use those type of equipment to be able to participate in the sciences. And I think that, that makes me think of how, we assume everything in terms of learning and participating in society, how they should be, but we have to learn that we have to continue to evolve and develop and learn more ways to include everybody, because if you leave out people, then you miss opportunities for many more great discoveries and possibilities. And so she's, still able to participate and do great things because things are in place to help. And that doesn't mean because there's things in place to help that you aren't contributing. So I loved seeing that. Now you can see her, she's done a TED Talk and she talks about that. So she's one that I just was like fascinated. What an interesting way. And maybe that will lead to other types of developments of technology and things that will help people with other disabilities to be able to participate in all of the fields, including sciences, right? Another one that really was heartbreaking to read was an essay. What is her name? Did I write her name down? Oh no. I think it's Dearwater. Hopefully it's 1 second and I'm going to tell you her name, because hers is really good. And the title of hers is The Erasure of Indigenous People and Chronic Illness, right? And her name is Jen Dearwater. And again, just information that I was not aware of in terms of, healthcare for Indigenous people in this country. She starts off talking about, just her experience with healthcare and how, she's had numerous examples and situations where she's even denied medicines. And I think that I'm grateful for books that can enable us to learn about what's going on right around us. So for example, I know that there are Native peoples that live on reservations, and I know that there are health crises. I know, from other books that I've read, that there's a lot of alcoholism and a lot of diabetes and poor diet and things like that that's happening in these areas. But what I didn't know was what kind of medical treatment do people have in there. And in this essay, she talks about that the only health care available to Native people living on reservations and provided by INH, Indian Health Services, which is an operating division of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, is consistently rated as the worst health care provided in America. And it goes on to say, how it's just grossly underfunded, and that she gives a really alarming example. In 2016, Congress allotted $4.8 billion for IHS, the same health care service I just mentioned, and it comes out to about $1,297 per person. Okay, for comparison, it says each inmate in a federal prison system receives an average of about $6,973 in health care each year. So $1,260, almost $7,000 for a prisoner in a federal facility. I mean, there's a direct message right there too, right? And it's just disheartening, and so it's just one of those things you just don't know about until you come across. So she's doing really great work to try to illuminate the fact that these type of discrepancies exist. There's also something that she mentioned too about a program where they were moving natives into cities, but that same health care was not able to extend always to those people. So they would be people living without insurance. So yeah, really, really heartbreaking. And I definitely want to read more about that. Another one was Richard T. Thornton Sr. And his was kind of, a sad story, but it also made me think about, there were heartwarming aspects to it, because I went online and I would take these people and I go Google them. And I saw a video about him, which if I get a chance, I will try to link it below if I can find it. Again, he basically is an advocate for he says the 92,000 people who are still living in large public and private institutions. His story just really moved me because, he was in an institution since he was younger. His wife, who's soon to be eventually wife, was in an institution. And when he wanted to get married, there was questions of whether they should be able to get married. They were like, well, are they going to be able to do this? And in the video, you can see they went on to have a beautiful wedding with other people with disabilities also in their wedding party. They went on to have a son. He works, she works. His son went on to have a child, so now he's a grandfather. And now he works, he still works, but he also goes out and tries to be an advocate to try to get institutions closed, and to advocate for the people that are in the institutions. His sister was in an institution and died in an institution, and he talks a lot about the questions surrounding her experience and her untimely death. I think that, institutions like that are just as mysterious to a majority of us, just as prisons are, because we don't go to them. When people are put into a prison, they're kind of locked away, right? And you assume general decency, you assume certain things, but that's not necessarily the case. And in institutions in particular, a lot of them are still operating under the same beliefs that they had 50 years ago. And so they're treating people inhumanely. And I think that those things have to be addressed, and they have to be, for people that have loved ones that are institutionalized, we have to help. So I was really moved by his story. And then there's also another woman, her name is Brittany Wilson, and she's a civil rights attorney and writer. And her story was about New York City's paratransit system. And so it's kind of like, basically I think they are like more like a minivan type thing. I don't know if they're always cars, but maybe they are cars sometimes as well. But they are a transit system that New York City had put in place to help people that have disabilities and to be able to get them from place to place. The idea and the concept sounds good, but the implementation sounds like it's kind of nightmarish. She gives a lot of examples of people that are stranded, people that are waiting for hours and hours to get the ride, or they, instead of dropping them off at their spot, they're driving them around all of these little places, and then they drop them off. It just not a well-organized system. And I just didn't know anything about this, and I just feel like if you want people to commit to being a full citizen and helping ourselves and everything to evolve, you want people that have disabilities and that challenges that need transportation to be able to get that, so they can get to work and they can do the things they need to do, and they need to be safe and treated humanely. And a lot of the times that's not the case, and a lot of the times the people are afraid because there's retaliation if they do complain about the service. And there was one statistic that she wrote about that said a recent audit was that more than 31,000 passengers had been stranded in 2015. 31,000 people stranded? I mean, that shouldn't happen. So, that really was interesting to me. I would like to learn a little more about how, what that's someone in New York, how does that work in other places? How is there, an organizing body that, oversees all of these, or are they just independently owned? All of that would be very interesting to find out more about. And then the last thing that I wanted to do, there's two more things. The second to last thing is the Harriet Tubman Collective, which I never had heard of as well. And it's basically a group of people that are trying to fight for the rights of Black, disabled, and maybe deaf people that are killed by the police, and also being left out of all of these movements that are upon us now, and that we have to think of the whole collective of people. It's, that oftentimes that you know, some of the police violence is against people that have mental disabilities, and they are not trained or equipped to handle these situations. And and a lot of times things end up to be fatal. So I think that it's really important, you know, everybody is well-meaning when we come up with different movements, but that we have to always try to do our best to think about the complete picture of who else is in or missing or needs to be included. So that was interesting, and I definitely want to research more about them. And then there's one, I haven't put it in here yet, but I got the picture because I put pictures in my book. This other woman, her name is, what is her name? Alice Sheppard. I think that's her, 164. Let me see. She is, let's see if I can look it up in the back. Her article, you know, essay really just made me think about how we experience art. And make sure I'm doing the right one. And she's a dancer. She dances in a wheelchair, and I will try to also see if I can find a link below one of her performances. Phenomenal. It's what we think, you know, what do we think is art? I think the essay made me think about, you know, we have to challenge ourselves on what we think is acceptable, who can participate in art, what is beautiful. Her performances are just, you know, I just sat there and I was mesmerized watching. And just, she utilizes the chair and also a cane, I think, or like a stick, and I think it's a cane. And she uses those as extensions of her body when she's dancing, and it's beautiful. And I think that the more that we move towards the knowledge of an understanding of disabilities and the range, then we can then move towards it being more of an inclusive society where we can have people participating in dance and in astronomy, and, you know, lawyers and people that are, you know, with varying degrees. Everybody has something to offer, and I think that we just don't naturally think of it because it's not always on the cover of the magazine. It's not something that people commonly see, but the more we get exposure to things, the more common and accepting we are of it. So I absolutely will be watching for more of her performances if they put them online. But these, like I said, were only a few of the people in this book that I you know, was moved by their story. And like I said, at the end here, she's got so much more for us that we can actually read and do. So, you know, this book, I'm just going to say, pick it up. It's really good. And even if you take a long time reading it, and that's okay, just, you know, read them. And then in the back, you know, like she'll tell you a little bit more about each person that wrote their essay, so you can learn a little bit more about them and where you can find more about them as well. It's an excellent book, a definite 5-star, because I think it just moved the needle for me even further. And I think that it's a good book to read, and I'm glad that I came across it and read it. And so that is my first thoughts and takeaway. Let me know if you've read this, what you thought of it, or if you're going to read it, because I think it won't disappoint, definitely. Anyway, hope you have a great day. Keep reading, wash your hands, social distance. Bye.